hello to everybody who finally gets to ask all the questions from someone who does a thing that they've always wondered about for their entire life. It's Beautiful Anonymous. 1 hour, one phone call, no names, no holds barred.
I'd rather go one-on-one. I think it'll be more fun, and I'll get to know you, and you'll get to know me.
Hi, everybody. Chris Gethard here. If you're not into intros, I get it. Do know we announce where and when you can buy tickets to attend our 500th episode live taping in this one. So if you're interested in live shows, you might want to check this one out. If you're not into it, skip ahead about 10 minutes. That'll put you towards the tail end of the intro. Thanks so much and enjoy the call. Hi, everybody. Chris Gethard here. Welcome to another episode of Beautiful Anonymous, where, as I've been saying lately, we look at the human condition one anonymous phone call at a time. You can hear a little bit in my voice. I'm not feeling great. I just had a really great talk with today's caller. I'm glad to tell you my voice held up. It's actually giving out now in the intro that we're recording after the call, but you're going to love this call. Before we get into that, I have to say thanks to everybody. I was plugging my Jersey City show really hard for a few weeks there on the show. Thanks for putting up with that. Also, thanks to everybody who showed up, including today's caller actually came to the show. We had so much fun, packed out White Eagle Hall. We're going to be doing more shows there in the future. Thanks so much for supporting us, making that happen. And now a special announcement about another show that I'll be talking about a lot is we are coming up on episode 500 of Beautiful Anonymous. So we're going to be doing our first live taping in a very long time. I think it's been well over a year since we had a live taping. I've really slowed down with going out on the road, but we are going to do a live taping. A lot of shows, what you do is you got episode 500 coming up. That's a big one. Maybe you'll have some people listening, callers who's, listeners who haven't listened in a while might come back. Maybe press will cover it. Who knows? We just had the Time magazine situation happen. Maybe that'll help dovetail nicely with that momentum. What you'll want to do is record a whole bunch of calls and pick the most badass banger one and put that out the week of episode 500. But we've never been great about strategizing here at Beautiful Anonymous, and in a way I think everything feels a little overly strategized in life. So what we are doing instead is we have firmly committed to the idea that we're going to go live on stage the Friday before episode 500 comes out, and whatever we get that Friday, that's what's coming out on Tuesday. That is episode 500. This will be happening in my home state of New Jersey. I hope people come hang out at the Jersey Shore. It's going to be Friday, October 17th, 7 p.m. It's at Smodcastle Cinemas in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, which I have to say, I'm very proud we're doing it here. If you're going, what the hell is Smodcastle Cinemas? It's a small independent movie theater owned by Kevin Smith, the guy who did Clerks and Mallrats and Chasing Amy and so much other stuff. Guy who really showed a lot of Jersey kids my age that DIY was not just a music thing. That when his films started taking off in the 90s and they were so Jersey pride, we all started to realize, man, people like us and from a place like this and from specifically working class backgrounds can be artists. It turns out if you take some chances, you bet on yourself, you work hard. Kevin Smith was a big piece of that puzzle for me and a lot of other people around my age where I grew up. So Smodcastle Cinemas, October 17th, 7 p.m. We'll be there. Atlantic Highlands is one of the more northern points on the Jersey Shore. In mid-October, it's not going to be totally cold yet. You're not going to be able to jump in the ocean, but it will be a lovely time to hang out at the Jersey Shore. If you are somebody from the area, please come out. And if you're like, you know what, episode 500, I'll come finally visit New Jersey to go to that taping, you can look it up. Asbury Park is right there. Long Branch is right there. You're not too far from the boardwalk of Point Pleasant. So many lovely things. And my thought as well is that Andrea and I have not had a chance to talk about this and discuss, but probably during that day or maybe the day before, we'll do some sort of, probably not the day before, that's a Thursday, but something else that will be some sort of meet and greet with people who have been listening for a while, whether that's surrounding the show directly or a separate companion event, who knows, but either way, we'd love to see you here in Jersey, and we're also currently planning this is kind of be the kickoff. Episode 500 obviously also means we're coming up on 10 years of the show. I think we're going to do 10 cities for 10 years, go out and do a tour next year, probably starting in the winter, spacing it out a little bit. But for now, so genuinely excited to invite all of you. Come hang out in New Jersey. Should be a really great time, and I can't wait to see you there. Okay. This week's episode is one I've been dreaming about for a long time. This happened totally organically. He got through on the lines. We are living in a stretch where if you've wanted to get on Beautiful Anonymous, it's clearly becoming easier. I decided to get off of Twitter. I just couldn't anymore. I couldn't. And it was really tough because I had 83,000 followers on there. At one point, it was up to like 99,000, but I guess a bunch of them were bots and dead accounts. Either way, 83,000 followers on there. We switched over to Blue Sky. You can follow me on Blue Sky now, where I have 830 followers, which is... Oh, my goodness. That was shocking to click over to my profile and just start laughing out loud, that because I believe in some sense of ethics and morals in this world, and I think that Twitter is a net negative for society at this point, but to realize that you could divide my follower count by, is it 100? Am I doing the math right on that? I used to have 83,000, now I have 830? That's a precipitous drop-off, to say the least. But if you want to follow me over there, it's never been easier to get on the show. And the reason I bring that up is because not last week, but just a few weeks back, you might remember we talked to a caller, really, really fascinating caller who works representing children in the legal system. And it was really intense and beautiful work, and we talked all about it and how you handle something that's vital, but it's not vital, but emotional. And also, a lot of people might remember that her husband was not just a tugboat captain, but a tugboat captain who insisted on owning hundreds and hundreds of birds that would be left in her care when he spent weeks out on a tugboat. The tugboat captain got through. We didn't organize that. We didn't engineer it. He just called in. His wife was like, you got to call too. And then he did. And I got to talk to him. And I tell you, I mean, we talked a lot. There's life philosophy in here. There's farming talk in here. And then there are a lot of minutia-based questions about what it's like to actually be out on a tugboat, because it's not a joke. I mean, if you've been listening to the show now for over 9 years, you know there's certain little topics that I just tend to be really fascinated by. I think one of the keys to the show, and I think one of the reasons that the show is good, if I can give myself actual credit for the rare occasion in this world, is I tend to know a lot of a small amount about many topics. I just love absorbing little glimpses into bigger worlds and lifestyles. And Tugboat Life is one that I can tell you for decades I've been fascinated by. I think I know exactly when it started. I first moved to Queens, New York in 2004, and I lived at the corner of 19th Street and Ditmars Boulevard. And that's right in Astoria, New York, very popular neighborhood that when you're first moving to the city, a lot of people move there. Great neighborhood, great food, largely historically a Greek neighborhood. And I lived right across from a Greek neighborhood and right next to Astoria Park. And I'll never forget, my dad helped me move a bunch of stuff in 20 years ago. And then I went outside and I was like, oh my goodness, I actually moved to New York City. I live in Queens. I live in New York City. This is crazy. And I was feeling that excitement of first day in a new apartment. And I walked outside to walk down to that park and see what the park a couple blocks from my house was like. And as I turned to face the park and walked down Ditmars Boulevard, I could see the East River. It was 2 blocks away. I lived 2 blocks from the East River. And a tugboat went by. And it was my very first day in New York, and I realized I just moved to a neighborhood where I just can see fucking tugboats. Sorry to curse in the intro. I never do that. But I'll never forget that I was like, what is this? Where did I go? Where did I move to? And just realizing that's a tugboat. It's right there. And it wasn't pushing there. It wasn't towing any boat. It wasn't pushing any boat. It was just doing it was just being a tugboat. And that was 21 years ago. And I always had that memory burned into my brain. And I'm so happy that this caller just was down to get nerdy with me as we talked about that tugboat life. It's a good call. I think you're going to enjoy it. Get your tickets. My hope, knock on wood, is that our 500th episode taping is going to sell out. So I hope you'll come hang down at the Jersey Shore with me, and maybe we'll see some tugboats go by when we're there. Either way, this call is great, and I think you're going to love it.
Thank you for calling Beautiful Anonymous. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on the show with the host.
Hello?
Hey, how you doing, Chris?
I'm all right. I had some dentistry done this morning, and it was significantly worse than I anticipated. So you can hear it in my voice. I'm bouncing back from a long morning, but I'm good.
You didn't take Mike the Clown with you, did you?
Oh, I love this. My friend Mike Weiss. I think this is the first time we've mentioned him on the show. I've become friends with a clown who is also a strongman. And I did do a show last night where he put me in a harness and lifted me off the ground with his teeth. And I was very nervous that I was going to injure him, but he did. Were you at the show?
I was there, yes.
Thanks so much for coming to the show.
My wife and I were there. Oh, you're welcome.
That's really nice that you came out. And also... Yeah, that clown. I thought I was going to break his teeth out of his head, but I was pretty proud of that show, man. I'm doing this new variety show, and it's for some reason it's just got a lot of buzz, a lot of energy.
That tomato was wild, I got to say.
Yeah, tomato was a little obnoxious, but I thought he stayed just on the right side of the line.
I think you need some friends.
Probably.
Like a corn cob or cucumber, pumpkin.
Let's not encourage like a whole fruit of the loom menagerie of... Let's not do it. And I also love that for any listeners who did not attend this one specific show I hosted in Jersey City, all their learning of it is that there was a strongman clown and a man dressed as a tomato via your references to it. How are you? How's things?
I'm honestly a little sticky, but not too bad. I've been extracting honey. So my wife messaged me and was like, hey, you should call this phone number. And I was in the middle of doing that and I wasn't going to. And she was like, well, just give it a call. Because she had sent me a message like about your post maybe 20 minutes before I called. And I thought, no, there's no way. Somebody's got to have called already. And so I said, what the hell, I'll call. And I didn't really get a chance to clean myself up. So doing all right. I'm sitting out on the porch watching the chickens and listening to the geese and the wind blow. I can't complain. That
sounds really nice. So you got chickens, geese, bees, it sounds like?
Yeah.
That's nice.
I work on a tugboat, so I'm gone 2 weeks a month.
Wait. Your wife is the prior caller?
Yes.
You're the tugboat guy that we talked about.
That's me.
It's so nice to talk to you.
She has been hounding me for the last 2 weeks, telling me that you would really like to talk to me, and I love talking to people and sharing things about my life and the oddity of it, to say the least.
This is awesome, because we talked a lot about you on your wife's call. I'm going to say first, I have a million, I got a million questions. First thing I'm going to say, did you listen to the call I had with your wife?
I did, yes. Oh, yeah. I was on the phone with her for 3 hours after you got off the phone with her because she was all hyped up. Which I was at work, so then I was all screwed up with my sleep because I work 6 hours on and 6 hours off on a rotating schedule for 14 days. So, if you miss a little bit of sleep, it's kind of hard to get it back.
I'm really very hard that I threw off your sleep rotation out there on the tug. That being said, first thing we got to say,
no big deal.
My man, you got to take it easy with these birds. Why you got so many birds when you're gone so much of the time?
Well, I have rare breed birds, so it's a conservation effort. I'd like to get to the point where I have enough of, 4 or 5 of each that I can sell older ones to people to continue these breeds. So it's not like I'm just collecting random chickens on the side of the road. And we've talked about downsizing. We kind of homestead is what we have going on. So we're trying to get to a point where we have like ones that are practical that, you could eat as well as look at that are pretty. And also I have an apple orchard. So a lot of the birds are in the orchard, and there's a type of farming, orcharding. It's called permaculture. It's where you use beneficial plants, animals, or plants and animals that are beneficial to each other. So a lot of them live in the orchard. They do their own thing. They fertilize. They do pest control. They keep the weeds down, all that kind of stuff. And then we have a livestock guardian dog, Frank, that lives in the orchard with them.
This is to make sure the foxes and whatnot, Frank the dog, make sure the foxes don't get in there?
Yeah, because the first year we had it fenced in, the first 2 years, I was okay the first 6 months, and then the foxes found them, and I lost 75 birds one year, and then the next year I lost another 40. So Frank's about 2.5 years old. He's a Great Pyrenees. I actually walked out on the porch to sit down to talk to you, and I have a grow-out pen in the front yard with chickens and geese and ducks, and a red-tailed hawk literally flew out of the sky and crashed into the side of it and tried to get them, and then took off and landed in the tree.
And
so, there's never a dull moment around here.
Will Frank the big dog try to fight a hawk, or does he focus just on the other four-legged creatures?
Frank will, yeah.
So you have a big dog, because those are big dogs, and you have a dog that will try to fight a bird of prey.
Yes, he's probably about he's probably about 125 pounds, 130 pounds. His father was a 150-pound dog, and he was the biggest one of the litter. So it takes him probably about 3 to 4 years to fill out size-wise. So he's got a little bit of bulk to put on yet. He looks like a giant polar bear with he's got black spots on his face too. So he's not all white like most of them.
You're living a real specific life. How did you feel listening to the call where your wife maybe expressed that when you're gone, keeping an eye on hundreds, if not thousands of animals might be a bit of a heavy lift?
Well, I understand. She also likes to exaggerate a little. And she failed to mention that all my coops have hard water piped right into them. So there's no carrying water. I have feeders I have 3 different coops, and 2 of the coops have feeders that'll hold anywhere from 75 to 300 pounds of food at a time.
Okay. So it's a pretty
and they're kind of self-sufficient.
It's a pretty hands-off experience most days.
Yeah. I try and I call it her name proofing, so she doesn't have to do things. I understand this is a lot. We got married 3 years ago, and we'd been together for 10 years when we got married. And at one point, I was like, look, if you don't want to live this life, if you want a different life or you want to have kids, because I'm not really into kids, please go find somebody else. I love you, I care about you, but I don't want you to be trapped in this, I understand I'm not exactly everybody's pill to swallow with my work schedule and then what goes on at home. I mean, I'm not here, and then I'm home and I run around like a chicken with my head cut off, usually for at least 10 days while I'm off. And, I have class cars that I'm restoring. I have the bees, the orcharding, the animals. I have hunting dogs that I guide for game birds with, because both of our hunting dogs passed away last year in the fall suddenly. The fall was really tragic. I lost my younger dog in the middle of a hunt on a Saturday afternoon, he got heat stroke, overheated, and died on
Oh,
me.
poor
and then
doggy.
3 weeks later, the next one passed away. You know, so it was rough. But now I've got a 3-month-old. They're called a Drahthaar. It's a German hunting breed that the German Kennel Club oversees. They have a breed club, and they, as far as breeding goes, like, it's probably as ethical as you can get. They test the dogs. They don't breed dogs unless they pass field trial tests, because they want the dogs to go hunt. They don't want to have them sit on a couch. And the first one I got 12 years ago, I had a 20-minute interview with the breeder asking me how long I was going to hunt it. And then I told him I worked on a boat, and he's like, who's going to look after the dog? Like, I don't sell dogs to sit on the couch and have people look at them because they look cool. And that dog, Elmer, his name was, Elmer died. We had to put him down last year. His back legs went when I say that's like 40,000 miles on his feet. I hunted that dog for 6 years, 10, 12 days a week in the field, 4 to 8 hours a day.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He lived a really good life, but it's just rough, you know. You don't
Sorry to hear about those losses.
like that. I mean, I don't even like losing my birds.
Yeah. So you're a real connected to nature person.
Yeah.
You're,
I don't know. I'm I got into genealogy a little while back. My mom's cousin is into genealogy, and she started putting a family tree together for me. And the one side of my family came from Germany in the 1730s, and they're farmers who've lived in southeastern part of Pennsylvania since they came here. And you know, I've got a lot of, I guess you could say, deep-rooted spiritual energy in that land. In the land, in the animals, that kind of stuff.
So you've been inhabiting the same part of the country for many generations. And it is, you know, you get out there in Pennsylvania and you realize, you know, a lot of people like to brush it off as like there's Philly and Pittsburgh and then Pennsylvania. And I get why people paint it with that wide brush, but there's actually a lot more to it to that. And the whole that's sort of like German Dutch culture touching Pennsylvania. It's still very real in a lot of places. Obviously, the Amish are a big representation of that, but even outside of that, there's a lot of that culture still around.
Yeah, we're out between Reading and Allentown, and there's Mennonites all over the place. Horses and buggies. It's not unfamiliar territory. I mean, when I first moved out here, I've been living in this area. I grew up about an hour from where I live now, closer towards New Jersey. But one of the funniest things was my wife and I were going to my grandparents for Easter, and it was raining, and there's a horse and buggy on the one road, and there's bicycles and little kids on scooters on this really busy road, and like it's just like, whoa, you know, they've got the babies in the horse and buggy, and any kid that's like older than 7 years old is on a bicycle or a scooter following the horse and buggy up the side of the road. Tractor trailers are going by them. Cars are going by them.
That's cool. There's even a language that still exists. Pennsylvania Dutch is still out there, which is actually a form of German, I believe.
Yeah, it is. It's like their own dialect. They use certain German words and then they make their own words up, I guess you could say. It's very interesting. I have a distant relative of mine who I used to farm with when I was a kid, and when he went to school in the 30s, he spoke Pennsylvania Dutch, and he had a really hard time at school. So when his boys got older, he stopped speaking Pennsylvania Dutch because he didn't want them to have the trouble that he had in school.
It's very understandable and also such a bummer to hear that basically peer pressure helps this language die out in families.
Yeah, in a way.
Now I have to ask, I'm getting this vision of you, this firm family roots in Pennsylvania, feeling very connected to the land, farming culture going back many generations. You're continuing that clearly. You understand that you're a very specific type of guy. When you got married, you even told your wife, If you want kids, that's not going to be my thing. You're dedicated to the bees, the birds, the dogs. How does working on Tugboat tie into this? Because it's a very fascinating thing. But
you're
it's
going
also
to get a kick out of this.
Yeah, please fill me in.
So I went to school and I was really into art. We had block scheduling in high school, so I did an hour and a half classes and then like 2 semesters. And that was really the only thing that I was into. My dad's a steam fitter. My brother ended up going to college, getting a master's degree, and he's a steam fitter now. My grandfather's a steam fitter. My dad's grandfather, my great-grandfather worked on restoring ships after Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. He was a welder, and I didn't want to do that. I held all kinds of jobs as a kid. I worked as a block layer, a farmer, worked at a dog kennel, plumber for years. And I was like, you know what? I really want to go somewhere that I'm not going to be able to live. Like, I didn't see my family picking up and moving. So I ended up going to this small art college in California, and I wanted to learn how to blow glass. I kind of looked at it like a trade. So I went there for 4 years, and the economy, took a crap in 2009, and I didn't really have a plan. Teaching wasn't going to be worth it for the amount of money that I spent. It was $125,000. I did a double major in black and white photography. My mother's always been somebody with a camera attached to her face. And when it push came to shove for me to come down to like my last couple of years, the photography professor that had like approved my double major ended up going on sabbatical. And the school basically said, well, you figure it out. And the glass blowing professor and I did not get along very well. And I just said, you know what? They want more money out of me. They wanted me to come for another like year and a half. And I was like, I'm not doing it. So I stopped and went home. And I have a friend of mine who's a boat captain. He just retired 2 years ago. He had been doing this for 50 years. His dad was a boat captain. His grandfather was a boat captain, all the way back to his, I don't know if it was his second or third great-grandfather was actually a boat captain in the Civil War. He has a letter from McKinley thanking him for his service after Lincoln was shot, hanging on his wall. And him and my father wanted me to go to the Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point up in New York City area. And I entertained the idea until I realized that it was a military school. And I was like, I don't want to go to military school. And when I got out of college, my dad's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I think I'm going to go work on a tugboat. And it took me about a year and a half to get all my credentials and get a job. I've been doing it ever since. I started in 2011.
That's incredible. And I've always been fascinated by tugboats. Living in New York for as many years as I did, I was just very well aware that you see tugboats all the time, but I don't think most New Yorkers think of tugboats as a part of their... You wouldn't say, like, what are some iconic things about New York City? Oh, hot dog stands on the corner and Times Square where all the tourists like to go. And, of course, all the tugboats. But they're there. They just fade into the background. And it makes me realize I used to sit there and think about, I don't know how many people work an average tugboat. I don't know where the tugboats dock while they're waiting for ships to come in. I don't know if they stay here. I don't know if there are tugboat bars where other tugboat people hang out. I don't know if there's like a harbor culture existing in New York amongst all the business people and the artists and the trust fund kids, and they don't even understand that it's still an active harbor with a culture of sailors. I used to have all these questions, and I'm finally talking to somebody who can answer it.
I can answer all those questions.
What a lovely thing to say. I can answer all your questions. Well, that is good, because I have many. We will be right back. Why drop a fortune on basics when you don't have to? Quince is here, and Quince rules so hard, everybody. They have the good stuff. Quince has high-quality fabrics, classic fits, lightweight layers for warm weather, all at prices that make sense. Everything that I wear from Quince is super solid. High-quality stuff that looks good and holds up better than most clothes. That's just the bottom line. Quince has closet staples you'll want to reach for over and over. Cozy cashmere and cotton sweaters from just $50. Breathable flow knit polos, comfortable lightweight pants that somehow work for both weekend hangs and dressed up dinners. And the best part, Everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middlemen, Quince gives you luxury pieces without the markup. And this is so good to be able to shout to the hilltops about. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. They use premium fabrics and finishes. And I just have to say, I have to pat them on the back. To work with factories that are doing stuff in a safe, ethical way, to make that part of your mission statement, that is worth shouting to the hilltops about. Kudos to Quince. And I always wear my sweaters from Quince. I have socks from Quince. My wife shops constantly from Quince. It's really great stuff. If you've seen me in the past few years wearing a sweater that looks good and you've been like, ooh, Gethard looks nice in that sweater, you are actively reacting to me as a living advertisement for Quince, because those sweaters rule. And I feel lucky to have them, and I look good in them. And you'll look good in them, and your loved ones will look good in them. You're going to enjoy the Quince experience. Keep it classic and cool with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/beautiful for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/beautiful. You'll get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/beautiful. Everyone these days is talking about weight loss meds. I'm sure you've had conversations in your life. I know I have. People are out here. This is a topic this year. These days, fewer people are talking about how hard they are to access. That's because Hers is changing the game. They have transparent pricing, expert care, and a personalized plan that's actually built and priced for where you are at. Hers is transforming women's healthcare by providing access to affordable weight loss treatment plans. They connect you with a medical provider who will work with you to determine the best treatment option for you. If you wind up getting prescribed, that medication is part of a doctor-developed weight loss program, complete with ongoing care, check-ins, dosage and medication adjustments, access to 24/7 online support, all at no additional cost. There's no hidden fees, no membership fees. This is not cookie-cutter care that forgets that you're sitting out there in the waiting room. It's putting your health, your goals first, with real medical providers making sure you get what you need to get results, all from the comfort of your couch. So if you're somebody who's been struggling, thinking about weight loss, finding that you're running into a wall, having a lot of conversations about weight loss medications, Hers is here. It's ready. They are so ready to help you find the best option that works for you through Hers. Whether you want to lose weight, grow thicker, fuller hair, or find relief for anxiety, Hers has you covered. Visit forhers.com/beautiful to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's FORHERS.com/beautiful. Forhers.com/beautiful. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not approved or reviewed for safety, effectiveness, or quality by the FDA. Prescription required. See website for full details, important safety info, and restrictions. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased. Thanks to all of our advertisers. Now let's get back to the phone call. I used to have all these questions, and I'm finally talking to somebody who can answer it.
I can answer all those questions. So my office for the company I work for is right in Red Hook, Brooklyn, it's right down the street from the IKEA. And all those old bars you're thinking about were right there in Brooklyn on that old cobblestone road. Those are all Tugboat bars.
There's a bar in Brooklyn that's become a real hipster bar, but I believe it's just always been like a sailor and longshoreman bar, and it's just survived long enough that now it has like hipster cred, but
it's come around the corner.
I forget the name of it. It's a famous bar, and you must know that. Do you know that key lime pie store down there? There's a store down there in Red Hook that only sells key lime pies.
That's news to me. I'll have to check that out. I worked out in New York City for, almost 10 years. The first couple of years I was specifically in the harbor. The company I worked for moves oil, anything oil related, crude oil, asphalt, any kind of distillate, gasoline, diesel fuel, ship fuel. So we don't do ship assist. We own barges and tugs and move all that kind of stuff. I actually gave up drinking in 2018, so I was really big into bar culture for the first almost 10 years, 7 years, and then I stopped. But Yeah, it's wild.
So there's a bunch of tugboat people hanging out in Red Hook. If I was to go hang out at the bars in Red Hook, Brooklyn, you'll start to meet the tugboat crews?
Probably not. And
Okay.
I say that it depends on. It depends. Like the company I work for now, everybody's so heavily regulated by the Coast Guard. After the Valdez incident, they started writing all these new subchapters into the CFRs, and it's a code of federal regulations that oversees everything. And before 1990 or 89, whenever that happened, tugboating was the Wild West. I worked with a guy who got his license in the mid-'70s, and he said coming to work was bringing your bag of drugs and whatever liquor you wanted, and the captain kept the fridge full of beer. And, like, that was the culture. That's not the culture anymore. And we get randomly drug tested. If you go to a dock and we bump into a dock and the dock worker's like, hey, you broke something off the dock, the company's drug testing the whole boat. Alcohol, the whole 9 yards. We keep breathalyzers on the boat. So, it's really not the Wild West anymore. There's certain niches here and there. I mean, the construction world, the guys that build the bridges, that move the stone and all that stuff. I worked for one of those companies for a short period of time, and that was, I didn't work on this vessel, but I knew a boat where there was a guy on there that traveled in from the West Coast, and he kept 15 cases of beer on board and was drinking all day long. But that's just not, at least the company I work at, the oil companies, that's not the case. We get regular audits every 3 to 6 months by the oil companies to make sure all of our stuff is up to snuff. I mean, I work as an engineer on the boat, so I'm responsible for the engine room, and basically being an engineer is like the engine room, you keep everything running, plus being like the man of the house. Like, I used to work for a boat captain. If the light bulb went out in his room, he'd call me, hey, can you change the light bulb? And I really liked him, so I did whatever he said. Now, there's other people I've worked with that's like, no, dude, you change your own damn light bulb. You're 40 years old. You can handle that. So it's a lot of personalities. I mean, The boat I work on is a 4-man crew. I'm an engineer, and I also do deck work. Normally, minimum, you're a 5-man crew. 25 years ago, you might have had 6 or 7 guys. A lot of tugboat companies all had their own cooks. I used to work for a boat captain, and that's how he started out. He was a cook. And a lot of guys started in the New York area. They started by what's called hamming and egging. They would be in a bar. They'd meet somebody from a tugboat, and they'd be like, hey, we need a crew member. And they'd take them on board when they were drunk. And the guy would wake up on a boat, be like, what the hell am I doing here? And they're like, oh, you signed up to work. Like, if you work out, we'll pay you. But right now you're here, and we're going to at least feed you.
Hamming and egging. Hamming and egging.
Hamming and egging. Yep.
This is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Effectively, kidnapping.
Stealing people.
Buy this guy enough shots that he doesn't know what's going on, and then he's going to be on the boat. And what are you going to do? Get to work. You're on the boat, so you're either sitting here all day or else make yourself useful.
Yep.
You can either make money or not make money. Either way, you're on a boat, and we're not dropping you off. So get to work.
Yeah.
You ham and egger.
Yeah.
You're a ham and egger.
And, with that culture in that respect has changed a lot too. Like, the boat captains have lost a lot of authority with the rise of human resource departments and I don't want to say cancel culture, but feelings. Like, I used to work with the guy that was a boat captain that started as a cook. He said to me one time, he's like, man, I miss the days when if I didn't like a deckhand, I used to just pull up to a buoy and leave him off on the buoy, or pull up to a dock. Heard stories of guys doing that. Like, guy deckhand really pissed the captain off 2 or 3 months in a row, and the captain pulled up, backed the boat up to a dock down on a river in the Chesapeake, said, hey, get off the boat, get your bags, there'll be a car here to pick you up in 20 minutes. The guy get off the boat, and the boat drove away, and the captain said, yeah, I guess he's going to find his way home. I didn't call anybody. We just called the office, said, hey, I need another deckhand. Didn't tell him where the guy was, why they didn't want him, but because the captain had that autonomy, and they don't have that autonomy anymore.
I like that you are like, this is the tugboat world's version of perhaps cancel culture, but to an outsider, it sounds like sanity. It sounds like it used to be no sanity, and at some point, they started realizing we need sanity. We need some level of rules and rhyme and reason here.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certain parts of tugboats are still very. I say to people sometimes, like, tugboating kind of like some areas of tugboating is like construction workers on the water. That's literally what they are. So you can think of like what, a block layer would be like. They used to work for a block layer. He told me, like, there was guys he used to work with. They'd show up with 2 cases of beer and drink 2 cases of beer before lunch. Go out to lunch to the bar, have 5 or 6 beers and a hamburger, and go back to work with a 12-pack. And that was their day at work every day. And tugboaters are that way. And there's still kind of sections of it that are like that, or just the crudeness of it. I mean, don't even get me started on politics of tugboating. And I'm not talking like politics of tugboating. I'm talking about politics in tugboating.
Like the political inclinations of the tugboat world?
Yes.
I have to imagine this is a world that all they want is less regulation, based on what you've told me. That,
not really what I was getting at. I was more like red and blue.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they probably vote Republican because they're like, we want no rules. We don't want to worry about the environment. We want everybody to let us do what we used to do.
Kind of, yeah. Or you get certain people that are like, hey, I voted red, and there's no reason that anybody that's on the blue side of the spectrum should be allowed to work on a tugboat. Literally heard that come right out of the guy's mouth.
Damn.
So it's just, sometimes it's, just put your head down, bite your tongue.
Now, if I remember right, your wife told me that you'll go on pretty long hauls, whereas in my mind, and I could be totally wrong about this, but in my mind, the traditional tugboat is in a port city, so New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore on the East Coast, right? It's these major ports, Newark and Elizabeth, that in my mind, and you tell me how true this is or not. My impression has always been that there's tugs hanging out in those ports, and as large ships come in, they can't be operating those giant engines too close to shore, too close to people. So tugs are called out, and they're kind of stationed in Philly or Baltimore or Newark or Brooklyn. It sounds like you work for a company where if an oil company is sending a giant barge of asphalt to hit up all the ports, that you as a tug would accompany them down the whole coast and help them in and out of all those cities as part of that private company?
So you're right with the stationing of boats. Like, there's companies in Philly. There's a couple different companies, and they have operations in Philly, Baltimore, all up and down the East Coast, New York, Boston, and that's all they do is ship assist work. Those ships have such big engines that they cannot use them in port close to the dock because they can't stop. So the tugs escort them in, and then the ship literally stops using their engines, and the tug will turn it around, push it to the dock, or when they're ready to sail, pull them off the dock, get them pointing in the right direction, and then turn them loose. And then in that avenue, certain ships require that each tug has a certain amount of horsepower to be able to move it based upon how big it is. The gentleman that I said that helped me get into this industry, he retired from a company that does that, and he still works part-time. And he was telling me recently, like, the one company that he works for was told, hey, we can't use this one boat with this certain shipping company anymore because it doesn't have, say, 7,000 horsepower. They require 7,000 horsepower on each tug. Now, my company, we own the barges, so, like, we're pushing them in the harbor, but, like, I used to run from New York City to Cape Canaveral, and we would take ethanol down there, and we would put it on a 3-inch cable and tow it behind us. And we'd tow it down there, and then take it off the wire right at the entrance to the harbor. Yep.
So you wouldn't...
Take it off the wire at the entrance to the harbor and then push it in and take it to the dock, and they discharged it, and then we'd take it out and go back to New York City, and we could do, like, 2 runs in a 14-day period, down and back.
Pardon me for jumping in and for being so focused on the minutia of this. So you're towing them the entire way? It's not like you're just pulling them in and out of the ports as needed? Why can't a ship that large make its way down the East Coast, like open seas in the Atlantic?
Okay, so in the United States, we have something called the, Jesus, it escaped me, the Jones Act. So the Jones Act is an act of Congress that was written around the Great Depression. I don't remember the exact date, but it covers farming. It's what basically allows farmers to pay their workers like, cents a pound versus dollars an hour. But it also governs shipping, and it says that in the United States, things that move between ports of the United States have to be moved by American vessels and American crewed vessels. And so, there was a big issue years ago with John McCain. A lot of guys like John McCain, but John McCain wanted to get rid of the Jones Act, which is it would effectively gut the American maritime industry, because these companies would hire Filipinos or people from the South Pacific or other impoverished companies and pay them, $100 a month instead of $600 to $1,000 a day.
And a lot of ships sail under flags, and also there's all sorts of very strange, hard to track gamesmanship of a ship might be sailing under the flag of a country that it's never even docked in. You start to look into shipping, and
they do that for tax purposes.
Right.
There's a lot from all these different goofy countries just for tax shelter.
Right, tax shelter, and to avoid regulations, to avoid different coast guards having a right to inspect them. It gets wild out there. You don't need to read too much about international shipping to realize that it's a massive industry that the whole world runs on shipping. It's also an industry dictated by laws that are sometimes things, rooted in things in like the 1500s, the 1600s, that it is this whole culture of hey, if whatever's happening on the seas happens on the seas, stop asking questions about it. If you're
well, and it's wild because when my wife was in law school, she would call me. Her first year of law, they cover a lot of the old laws, and a lot of the old cases that they start students on is shipping. Ships being attacked by pirates, ships exploding, ships sinking, insurance stuff, and a lot of that stuff from, just like you said, 200 years ago is still on the books. And it's crazy that you have to follow a law that was written for a ship that was under sail. And now you've got ships that aren't made of wood, that are under sail, that have 40,000 horsepower engines, and they've got 2 or 3 of them. It's just nuts.
That's really fascinating to hear that your industry exists largely because of a law that... So if they're going from the New York Harbor to Philly, and they are a ship that is not an American-owned ship, they're not allowed to turn those engines on from port to port. They need you legally to get them there as American workers.
Well, they can. They just can't pick product up. Like a ship can't come from, say, the Middle East and discharge crude oil and then pick up gasoline in New York City and take gasoline to Philadelphia. They can pick up crude oil in the Middle East and come to New York City and drop, say, half of a load of crude oil off here, and then go to Philly and drop half a load there. Anything that originates in the United States has to be moved between ports by a United States vessel.
Wow. And now it does. Now you're making that long trip, right? You're bouncing to a few ports, New York to Cape Canaveral. I don't know if you're going straight there, or are you stopping at other ports along the way? Are you stopping at your Charleston, your Savannah?
No, we were going straight there. I know I did run into Charleston for a while. That was actually when I first started doing those longer runs, we were running. At first, we would run from New York to Charleston, and then they got us a contract run from there for a little while, and that contract expired. And then we ran to Savannah for a little while, and that expired. And then we went in and out of Canaveral. Then the boat went in the shipyard, and the barge that was on contract got handed off to another boat, which was built a little differently and was slower. And then they lost the contract for the company, so we did other things. And then I got on a boat that was based out of St. Rose, to New Orleans area on Mississippi, and we were running asphalt pitch. The company built a couple asphalt barges, and that's wild because you've got a 365-foot long barge that's 75 feet wide that has to be heated to 250 to 350 degrees if there's asphalt in it, because if it cools, it turns into a giant block. And we would take that all over the place. So I ended up going to Puerto Rico with asphalt for a couple months. We would take it to Savannah, Charleston, in and out of Tampa.
That's wild.
Basically the pitch that they put stone in. That turns into the asphalt.
In my mind, like, I understand that Puerto Rico is relatively physically close, but it's still, that's a hell of a haul. I don't think of a tugboat out on the open seas for that long. You just don't even
There are lots of them. And what's crazy is, like, the you've seen in New York, the ones on the West Coast are 3 times that size because the waves and everything else are so much larger.
I know that I'm being very nerdy with my questions today. I cannot stress enough how much this is a dream.
You are totally fine.
Dream conversation. I had dreams. I would tell people, a lot of times people would be like, if you didn't end up doing what you did in life, are there any jobs you ever dreamed about? And I'm like, tugboat captain. I always thought it was a cool culture, and I can't believe I get to ask you questions. You also get to interact a lot with another culture that I think is, especially in all sorts of major cities, another culture that's really locked into its own traditions, standards, lifestyle, and that people don't understand that you're interacting with them all the time. The longshoremen. You must bounce off the longshoremen a lot.
Not so much. Not on a personal level.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
More like, hey, we're taking a barge to a ship, a container ship in Port Elizabeth, that is getting fuel from us. It's called bunkering. So you're taking a bunker barge to a ship to bunker them fuel. And the longshoremen are on these cranes pulling the containers on and off. And you're going, man, I hope this motherfucker knows what he's doing, because if he drops this box down here, it's going to splat me and sink the barge.
That is a wild. Also, that union, that longshoremen's union, they started messing with that union, and the news started to hit.
Uh-huh.
And their president went on national television and was like, so here's the thing. If we go on strike...
Shut the whole country down.
He said it. He goes on TV. He goes, we will take down the American economy. Supermarkets won't have bananas.
And they did.
He goes, supermarkets won't have bananas 4 days after we go on strike. We'll take down the entire U.S. economy. Don't do this. Don't fuck with us. And they didn't.
Well,
they buckled immediately. They were like,
involved.
What's that?
Yep.
That's
where the politicians have gotten involved. That's where all this union busting comes from, because 40 years ago, they could do that. The longshoremen all stood together. When the longshoremen went on strike, the tugboats went on strike, the Teamsters went on strike, and they said, fuck you. We have the power, not you. And they have spent the last 40 years in this country trying to break all that stuff up. And largely it's worked, because now things like, a month ago, the city of Philadelphia went on strike and they had trash piling up everywhere. And, but 40, 50 years ago, if the city workers went on strike, so did everybody else. And it got resolved because everything ground to a halt. And we've really forgotten all those principles in America.
Well,
that, like, the little people have the power. There's a lot more of us little people than there are billionaires.
And I think it's just about time. And I'll tell you something. I might be in the entertainment unions, but in my household, between my wife and I got 2 union cards. She has 3. And the bottom line, I think, is, like, when I've been out on strike lines for the Writers Guild, I'm always shocked that pipe fitters show up and march with us. Longshoremen show up and march with us. All the unions start to turn around and go, it doesn't matter if you're in a writers union or if you're a longshoreman operating a crane, or you're out there and you're a surveyor, or if you're out there building bridges, the workers need to stick together. And there's a lot of rumblings that there might be one of those general strikes coming for the first time in a long time, like you said. And I would love it. I would love it if the tugboat union was the one that was like, hey, they're pushing us too fucking far and we need everybody's help. And it was the tugboaters that got everybody to trigger the general strike. I would love it so much.
Ironically, there's not too many tugboat unions out there that are left.
I bet they
The one in
broke
New York
them.
City, the one in New York City got broke. The company I work for is a family-owned company, and it's been rumored like, hey, if you start a union, not only will we fire you, we'll lock the doors and fire everybody.
Yeah, this is the way they want it.
It stops. And unfortunately, that threat keeps people from doing it. Also, general ignorance. I come from a union family, like I said, deeply union family, and you can spend a couple $1,000s in union dues a year, and you can make tens of thousands of dollars more. But there's a lot of people in this world that are short-sighted and don't see that.
Yeah.
They see, I don't want to have to pay to go to work. I don't want to have to. A union due is a tax to go to work. Yeah, okay, you may pay $2,500 a year, but if you work in a union, your hourly rate. My brother's in the steamfitters union in Philly. His hourly rate with his package, his insurance, and everything else, is like $175 an hour. Now, he doesn't get that as paycheck. He gets $85 an hour. But if he was just a regular steamfitter for a non-union company, he'd be lucky if he was making $20 an hour.
It
doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that it's worth it.
Let alone the job security, the safety, the insurance, the protections against exploitation and greed, all these things. Anyway, another union rant here on Beautiful Anonymous. Let's pause. You all have been hearing. I'm personally trying to just drag this country into a general strike. I'm personally trying to do it. You've heard it on the show. Let's see if it works. Who knows? Anyway, let's get back to capitalism. We've got some ads. Summer is here. We are in it, everybody. There's beach days, weekend getaways, backyard barbecues. Your to-do list, it's not getting shorter, right? You got a patio. You said you were going to build it by Memorial Day. How's that going? You watched a grouting tutorial. You went on YouTube and watched a lot of tutorials about how grout works. But did you do the grout? What about that garbage disposal that's been making that sound? Have you fixed that? Enter TaskRabbit, your secret weapon for a carefree summer. TaskRabbit connects you with skilled taskers to help with moving, mounting, furniture assembly, home repairs, and more. Many taskers are available to help the same day. Why wait? Why wait for you to do it from your massive to-do list when you can make your life easier and have a tasker do it instead? To get started, go to TaskRabbit.com, download the app, search for the best tasker for your job based on cost, skill set, availability, and past client reviews. Next, schedule a tasker even as early as the same day, and once the tasker has completed the job, you can pay, tip, and review all on the convenient TaskRabbit app. Taskers have assembled over 3.4 million pieces of furniture, done 700,000 home repairs, completed 1.5 million moves, and more. Plus, with TaskRabbit's happiness pledge, if you're not satisfied, they'll work to make it right. I have been using TaskRabbit many years. I mean, going back 11, 12 years now, I started using TaskRabbit. I know that when there was a massive stretch where when Hallie and I moved in together, we both had art. We had to decide what was staying, what was going up, what's getting put in frames, and we had all this art sitting around. I'll never forget, we hired a tasker who came over. They brought brown paper, cut all the pieces of paper in the exact sizes of the art that we had, put those up on the wall, talked us through it. It felt so much easier, so much more relaxed. We were able to kind of get the sense of what everything was going to look and feel like. And then they got to work, got everything mounted. It was quicker. It was up there safer and more stable than we ever could have done. Brought tools, got it done. Truly a 5-star experience. And I've talked about this on the show before too. I will never forget. There was a point where Cal jumped at me to scare me, and I fell onto the open door of our dishwasher and destroyed it. We ordered a new one. It got dropped off. The installation was supposed to happen as part of that. It got botched. I've got family coming over. We've got a dishwasher just sitting in our kitchen. I said, TaskRabbit, let me get a tasker over here. The tasker showed up same day. It was on a holiday weekend. Got it done. The thing has been running great ever since, and it all happened before we had family coming over to stay with us, where the whole kitchen would have been a disaster and there would have been a broken appliance, all this stuff. TaskRabbit saved me on that one, and I'm sure they can make your life easier as well. Tackle your to-do list today. Get $15 off your first task at TaskRabbit.com. or on the TaskRabbit app using promo code Anonymous. That's promo code Anonymous at TaskRabbit.com for $15 off your task. TaskRabbit, book trusted help for home tasks. Thanks again to all the advertisers who allow our show to exist. Now let's finish off the phone call. Let alone the job security, the safety, the insurance, the protections against exploitation and greed, all these things. Anyway, another union rant here on Beautiful Anonymous. When you get to a destination and you stay in a city, I would imagine you're sleeping on the boat if you're not really coming in and out of ports. If you're going from New York to Florida, 6 hours on, 6 hours off, this means there's a tugboat is large enough that everybody has a bunk of some sort. I want to hear what that's like. And then when you do get to a port, are you there long enough that you come offshore and stay in a hotel, or do you just stay on the boat the whole time?
Oh, no. I live on that boat for 14 days. During COVID, we were on 21 days. Honestly, I'd like to go back to a 21 on and 21 off.
But these
Everybody
birds,
has their own room, so
don't let your wife hear you say she's going to have to care for these birds for 3 weeks at a time now?
She did for COVID, but she was off of work, too.
So you're on the boat the whole time?
So, the downstairs of our boat's 100 foot long, 36 feet wide, and the air draft, which would be like the part out of the water to the top of the upper wheelhouse, has an upper wheelhouse and a lower wheelhouse. The top of that would be 75 feet, but if you add the bottom in it, there's like 14 foot of draft. So you're like 90 feet tall from the bottom of the hull to the top of the mast. And in downstairs, we've got a galley, which is like a kitchen table, a bunch of cabinets, and then there's a staircase to go upstairs, and the kitchen's on the other side of the staircase, and then forward would be the head and 3 staterooms. And so one's the mate's room, one's the deckhand's room, and one's the engineer's room, has a set of bunk beds. And so you have like the deckhands would share a room, one's awake and one's sleeping, and the mate would have his own room, and then I have a room. But if we have like when we were going to Cape Canaveral, our barges weren't built as ocean going. So for insurance purposes, we had to bring the tankermen on board. The barges had guys that live on it for 12 or 14, 21. Some guys work, the barge guys are nuts. I know some guys, they'll work 6 weeks and they'll take weeks off, and they do that all year long.
Take how long off? 6 weeks on, how long off?
You make all this money, but like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
There's a boat captain that works with me, Chris, and he works 330 to 350 days of the year.
So he just
does not get off the boat.
He doesn't have a home.
One boat and goes to the next boat.
He doesn't have rent. He's not paying a mortgage.
If you talk to him, he has 16 homes. He's from down south, and he pays for everybody in his family. He'll tell you, I own 10 homes. I own 30 cars. He just bought a house for his niece and her son who works at my company not far from where I live. And he told me a couple months ago he put a $30,000 playground in the backyard for their kids.
So he just lives on a boat year round and pays for everyone around him to live.
Yeah, it's really wild. And the crazy thing is, like, he's a really nice guy, but he's also one of these guys that, like, I've worked with him and I've worked with crew members, other ones that have worked with him, and there's been people that are like, dude, if you added up all the experience he has, he'd have to be 150 years old. So he likes to exaggerate. So you're like, okay, well, what is actually truth and what is not? But I can tell you, because I can tell you the amount of time on the boat is truth. It's just all the other stuff in his life. And, you want to think that he's a really good guy, and he is. He's very generous, but you're like, okay, like, do you really have this, or do you really just do it because you might have a gambling problem, or you have a drinking problem, or you just have no home life, and that's kind of sad in its own right. Now, I do this job because it affords me to have 2 weeks off a month to do whatever I want, to live a life. If I was doing plumbing work like I was before tugboating, I'd work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and have Sundays off. What kind of life is that?
So you're doing it for the freedom it provides outside of tugboating. Some people, I would imagine, are doing this is a cliche that goes back hundreds of years, that there are some people who can't handle life on land and the boat is their real life, and they're doing anything they can avoid to view to experience what the rest of us view as real life. the obligations, the responsibilities of land.
Yeah.
So, and there's food,
and even
there's showers on the
take
boat.
that further, like we have the guys that live on the barge. Like a lot of the guys that are on the barge, they worked on the boat, and they can't handle being around 4 or 5 or 6 other personalities. So they go work on the barge, and it's just them and one other person, and they work either 6 hours, or like the guys we work opposite of, the barge we're on contract with, they work 12 hours. So one guy's up for 12 hours, and he does all the pumping, the loading, however it falls, and then the other guy's up for 12 hours and does it.
And they never have to interact with other people.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, you might get 20 minutes, like at watch change, we call it, where you're like, hey, this is going on, that's going on, this is what we have coming up. And then they, go off and go to bed, or, cook, or, play video games or whatever they're into, television.
Oh, I was just going to ask, you guys got satellite, you got Netflix on there, Wi-Fi. How do we handle all this?
So they are coming around. The company that I work for, everybody had DirecTV, and that was all up to the crew to pay for it. The boat crew I work for, the captain that's opposite of us is almost 70. And he's like, I don't watch TV. I'm not paying for it. So our guys are like, well, we don't really watch TV. So we have just the general public access antenna on the TV. We have Wi-Fi on the boat. So we each have a computer of our own. We can watch stuff. But they're getting to the point with these boats like that run offshore all the time that they're putting Starlink on them so that they can have the internet, the cable, or the internet for the TV, the internet for the conversation between the dispatchers and everything. And service, where before they were paying for internet and like a regular phone, and then like if you were running offshore, we had a satellite phone. Because my wife mentioned that, like she'd have to call the boat, and like if I called out, it would cost the company money. If she called in, it wouldn't cost any money. So I'd call her, say, "Hey, can you talk?" And she'd say, "Yeah." We'd hang up, and then she'd call me back. But you don't get a lot of privacy. You sit in the wheelhouse with the captain sitting 5 feet away from you.
That's a little daunting to hear that Starlink, which, everybody's heard of Starlink by this point, and also in areas that are war-torn, it's a way to keep internet active. Like in Ukraine, it provided internet after infrastructure was damaged. There's a part of me that's instantly scared to go, oh man, I bet that's happening with shipping everywhere, because it's a system that makes far more sense. And then you go, is Elon Musk secretly in control of massive major aspects of global shipping? Oh, shit. Okay, there's a thing I just learned on Beautiful Anonymous. That's not great.
I worked with a deckhand whose father worked for our company for years, and the kid was great, but he was clueless. And I had to explain to him where bread came from. And I'm telling you this because, to circle back to what you said about people don't realize things, he didn't know that like bread came from grain, essentially, that was grown on a farm. Like, I had to explain the whole process. Like, the farmer grows the grain, you harvest the grain, you grind the grain, you can make the bread. People don't think about that. Our industry, whether it's tugboats or the shipping, the container ships or the tankers, it's 24/7, 365. There is not a day off, whether it's for the longshoremen, the dock workers, the people in the office on any end of it, for the tugboat, for the oil company, for the shippers. And, we have become so accustomed to instantaneous and, just taking things for granted that, like you were saying, if a strike happened, it would stop everything and make people think, because people don't think. They don't think where their gasoline comes from. I mean, for years, my mom's friends would be like, why don't you get off the boat? Because we don't get off the boat. We go to the port, they pump the barge. If it takes them 12 hours to pump the barge, they pump the barge. We get back on the wire, it's called, and tow it wherever it's going, and then load it and go back. And unless we need to go shopping, we'd get a taxi to a Costco or something, and we go do our shopping, and then we get on the boat again. But my mom's one friend is a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan, and she was asking me years ago, and I said, look, you know where the Eagles Stadium is in South Philly? And she said, yeah. I said, okay. I said, well, there's the oil refineries. And she goes, yeah. I said, do you get out of the Eagles game and go hang out in the parking lot of the oil refinery? He goes, no, why would I do that? And I said, well, that's where I work. Like, that's essentially what you're asking me. Like, oh, you get off the boat. And I'm like, no. And for years when I was drinking, I didn't want to get off the boat because I didn't want to get myself in any trouble. Yeah. I wanted to keep my job. I didn't want to get off and be hammered and not find my way back to the boat. I mean, I've heard stories of that happening recently with people since I've been doing this for 15 years. It's few and far between, but it does. And like when you have a house and a woman you care about and all this stuff, like, you need a paycheck. I need to be able to pay for things. As much as I hate it.
Now, I got to ask you too.
It's a means to an end.
I love everything you're saying. Is fascinating. I got to ask you too. We've talked so much about how the logistics, getting these barges one place to the other, the Jones Act I learned about today, all the shipping. But there's another major aspect of what you do, which is, and I know it's become a really, really huge thing in the shipping world, which is that I remember years ago reading this really great article, the Star Ledger, the paper in Jersey, did this amazing multi-chapter article called The Wreck of the Lady Mary. And I was obsessed with it when I read it. And it was about this small scallop boat and how it wrecked. And there were only 2 survivors, and no one could exactly figure out what happened. But a lot of what they argue is that some of these shipping barges, and especially some of these container ships, have now become so huge that it's actually physically not possible for them to see smaller boats around them. And that sometimes the actual safety, like the shipping containers and the actual ships being used now are monstrous to the point where these things happen. And was this an incident where a container ship didn't even realize they wrecked another ship, or maybe covered it up and just kept going? But I would have to imagine, if you're tugging a massive ship full of oil from Florida to Puerto Rico, that means every leisure yacht, every fishing boat, every whatever, you're responsible ultimately. I know smaller vessels get out of the way of larger vessels, but everyone's safety is also ultimately in that tugboat's hands in a lot of ways, in a way I didn't realize before this call.
Yeah, so we were actually towing a barge. I used to run jet fuel from New York City to Boston Logan Airport, and we were coming south from Boston. We came all the way down the East River, down through the harbor, and we were actually off at Asbury Park. We're towing a barge to Norfolk, I believe, is where we were headed. And this, the fishing trawler with the big, like, outriggers hanging off of them and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're in the wheelhouse, and I'm sitting there with the captain, and he's calling this boat, and they're heading west, and we're heading south. And this boat, he's calling them on the radio, calling them. The captain must have fallen asleep and left it in gear, and he almost ran right into us. We had to take him out of gear, and the dude passed in front of us within like 40 feet. And that is really close when you're talking about in the ocean. And there was not a soul awake on that boat, I can tell you that. They were just... Now, whether they were asleep because they were tired or they were asleep because they were on drugs, because the fishing industry is completely unregulated.
Yeah.
It happens. And I mean, I worked on a boat that used to run gasoline to Albany up the North River. And the mate I worked with, we were coming south out of Albany, south of Rensselaer, and he almost ran a family over on a boat that was dragging the tube around. We're pushing the barge in front of us. The mate's in the upper house, and he's watching this boat. They're a mile down river, and the guy's dragging his kids around, and the kids fall off. And he's okay, like, pick the kids up, get out of my way. He picked the kids up and kept right on going, dragging them around. Well, then they fell off again, and the mate pulled them back, sounded the general alarm, blew the foghorn, the whole 9 yards, and he goes, I thought I killed them. Because they came out from under the barge, and he goes, they couldn't have been more than 30 feet in front of the barge. They come tugging down, and people do that all the time. And up there in the Hudson, it's all rock. It sucks to say, but if you're a commercial operator and you have the choice between cracking an oil barge open on the rocks in New York State or killing somebody, you're running them over. That's just the truth of the matter.
I get what you mean. An oil spill is going to kill more things and people.
Well, not only that, but you're responsible. Like that master of that vessel or that person running that boat, if they crack that oil barge open, the government's going after them for the cleanup, for the millions of dollars. They'll go after the company to a degree, but the way the law is written, the master of the vessel is in control of everything.
So they'll kill that captain if they really, really go, it is one or the other. They will kill that kid on the errant tube that floated out in front of the way. they'll do that rather
They're
than
going to
hit the
try
rocks.
not to. They're
Of
not going to
course.
speed up
Of
and run them
course.
over. But yes, they're going to do everything
jeez.
to not do that. But if it comes down to it, you can't get out of the channel up there in the Hudson River. Like I said, it's all rock, and it goes from the channels 50, 60 feet deep to 10. And if the barge is drawing more than 10 feet, if it's loaded, then those barges will draw 15 to 20 feet, depending on the product they're moving.
And ultimately,
not
it
going
is.
out of that
I don't know if
channel.
it's actual maritime law or if it's just very well known custom. A rowboat gets out of the way of a sailboat gets out of the way of a yacht gets out of the way of a shipping container. Small boats are always supposed to yield. Even I know that.
Yeah. So I have a little nugget of knowledge for you. I'm assuming you'd probably like to read a little. Go on Amazon and get yourself a book called The Coast Guard's Rules of the Road. It's a little book about 200 pages, and it's all the laws that govern shipping. And it talks about that. It talks about the light patterns, the different lights on the boats mean different things. When you see the lights, which orientation of the boat is, and it talks about passing arrangements, and it talks about all that kind of stuff. I mean, ultimately, the rule when it comes down to it is it's both parties' responsibility to not hit each other and not cause an accident.
Yeah.
Regardless of what all the other stuff says, it's that's the ultimate goal is
don't
cause
hit each other. Now we have 3.5 minutes left, and I'm psyched we have time to sink our teeth into it. I'm very, very struck. I mean, I hear roosters in the background of where you are right now, and I'm struck that when you're home, you're literally covered in honey right now. You have birds, you have dogs, you practice a style of farming where an orchard is overrun by birds because they have a symbiotic relationship and can take care of each other. You're clearly an environmentalist. But then the other 2 weeks of the month, and I offer no judgment, but I bet you've had to think of this. I sit here, I go, you've mentioned shipping gasoline, oil, jet fuel, asphalt. Like, these are industries that are notoriously considered not environmentalist, and I wonder how that balance works for you.
Yeah. Truthfully, it's not something that I think about. Do I understand that they're terrible? Yes. My rational mind understands that, but at some point you go, this is the game and I have to play it to a degree, and I don't want to be poor. And, I compartmentalize, I guess, is the easiest thing to say. I do it. It's the highest pay that I can make in the tugboat world is working for an oil company. So that's what I do. And it affords me the life that I live. And I do the best to harbor and take care of the things that are within my sphere. I don't know if that's an agreeable answer or not, but
it's
kind of the way it is.
I know. I mean, I'm sure there's psychologists listening who are fascinated. I guess it does beg the question, when you think of like who you really are you the tugboat with an oil company guy, or are you the I harvest honey and raise birds guy? Like, which one is you and which one is the one, or do they just coexist and you're able to compartmentalize like that?
To certain people, to myself, I've told people before that I'm like a hippie mechanic farmer. That was who I was. That's who I am. But certain people, like, I volunteer with a beekeeper from Penn State, and she introduces everybody to me that also volunteers with her as tugboat. So to certain people, that's what I am. To other people, like, I am just this nut that is into 100,000 different things. I've had close friends of mine be like, why don't you just slow down? And I've come to realize that I might have a little ADHD in my brain somewhere.
Yeah,
but like, to me, it's all connected. Like, I have the orchard, and I have the bees because of the orchard, and I have the birds to a degree because of the orchard, and I have the dog because of the orchard, and then I have these other hobbies like the classic cars, and then I have tractors that I'm working on because I have an orchard, and I have a backhoe because I have an orchard, and I live on 5 acres of property. weird interconnectedness and, I guess, like you said, symbiotic relationship. The ultimate goal is to make enough money to pay my mortgage off and the little bit of bills that I have around the house and stop tugboating and just farm and live here. And I told my wife, I said, my taxes where I live are $10,000 a year. I was like, I could work just selling honey and make that money. And if that means that I get to stay at home and sit on my porch and be here when my wife needs me and, enjoy my dogs and my birds and this life that I am trying to enjoy, then that is probably what's going to happen. It really, to me, is a means to an end. Now, whether or not I ever pull the plug and say, hey, that's all right, I've got enough money to start this venture, I don't know that I'll ever be there. And that's a little scary, because I've worked very hard to try and get there. But you've become so dependent on that job that you're like, wow, do I really want to walk away from $150,000 a year to make 20? But, it's a mental health thing, too, at that point.
We're out of time on our regular feed. And I have to say, you don't meet too many people like you. Like, there's something about you that I also will say this, and it's funny because you're just living your life. You're doing your thing, shopping at Costco, just like everybody else, as you've mentioned. But I can also say you are like a uniquely American character in a way that we don't often get to talk to people, but like you represent something I think about a lot of people would hear about, like, 2 weeks on a tugboat and then 2 weeks farming. And that feels like something from the past. And I have to say, there's something so cool about talking to you and realizing you're right here, right now, present moment. You were at my show last night in Jersey City, and yet also living this life that feels like it's walking multiple very specific, unique worlds that are not the standard experience anymore these days. And I feel so lucky that you shared so much with me.
Yeah, I was joking with my wife on our way to your show last night. So I really want to stop and get a poster board and write like chickens and tugboats for Chris or something to have in the crowd. And she told me that was a bad idea. She's sitting next to me on the porch laughing at that too, by the way.
Well, we're out of time here. Are you cool with the idea of hanging out for a few extra minutes and answering some questions submitted by other listeners?
I'll do my best. Yeah.
Incredible. Caller, I can't thank you enough for answering my very specific questions about where you sleep on a tugboat. All the nerdy things I've wanted to know. Could have asked you, honestly, 3 more hours of tugboat questions and like 5 more hours of farming questions. So thank you so much for opening up and letting us know about your very unique life. It means a lot. Thank you to our producer, Andrea Quinn. Thank you to Shellshag for the theme music. punchup.live/Chris Gethard if you want to know more about me, including ticket links, including the link to the live taping of episode 500 of Beautiful Anonymous. We got a voicemail line, 973-306-4676. We're on Instagram at Beautiful Anonymous Pod. Join the Facebook group, Beautiful Anonymous, the community. Thanks so much, everybody. This week on Beautiful Anonymous Plus, here's some of what you'll get from the 5 questions. We did a follow-up with former producer of the show, Harry Nelson, and he left a question, which was, if you had to go through any sort of Stephen King scenario, like if your life took the plot of a Stephen King novel or film, which would it be? Maybe you're chained to a bed by a fan. Maybe you're going to find a dead body in the 1950s. What Stephen King scenario appeals to you, knowing that a lot of them are pretty freaky?
I think that he wrote the book It about the clown, right?
He did, yeah.
So I think I'd be a clown.
You'd be the clown. Okay.
Be the clown, yeah, why not?
Okay. That was a clown who lived in the underground sewage system and
in the sewer, right?
Killed children, I believe.
Yeah, if you think I worked as a plumber, like, why not?
You do like going off the grid. All right. I guess the life of Pennywise does sort of fit you a little bit. Guy who likes going after outside of the whole killing kids thing. I see how we connected there. Don't forget to sign up for Beautiful Anonymous Plus at beautifulanonymous.com.